They clapped when I walked in with a tray of water bottles. At first I thought the applause was for someone behind me, maybe a surprise donor or the mayor's entrance. But no, it was for me. Or rather, for the joke Eleanor Rourke had just told, holding court like she always did, champagne perched between two long fingers, her voice polished and icy. "Let's see if the janitor's son knows how to castle," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The laughter that followed came in waves, polite, condescending, high-pitched. The kind of laughter that says we're all in on the same joke, and the joke isn't funny so much as it is cruel. I stood there, still holding the tray, while 30 pairs of eyes, executives, investors, tech founders, polished spouses with expensive smiles, studied me like I was part of the decor. Eleanor, still wearing that crimson Armani blazer that made her look like a general at a business war table, motioned me forward. "Come now, Elijah. You've been walking past this board every night. For what? 10 years your father never played. Maybe you've picked up a thing or two." My fingers tightened on the tray's rim. Somewhere across the room, my dad, Luis, was likely down in the service corridor, replacing mop heads or logging supply receipts. He'd cleaned this building since before I was tall enough to see over the sinks. They didn't know I'd been watching them play for years, Eleanor and her executive board buddies, sipping Macallan while playing aggressive Queen's gambits like it was a blood sport. I stepped forward slowly. The board was already set, ivory and onyx pieces on custom maple and rosewood squares. One of a kind, the Rourke collection she called it, each piece carved by hand in Poland, according to some article I'd read once online. "Happy to play Ms. Rourke," I said, setting the tray down beside me. A flicker passed behind her eyes. She gestured to the white side. "I'll take white naturally," she said. Of course she would. She opened with a textbook, Nimtso Indian Defense. Fast, confident. Her fingers tapped rhythmically on the table between moves, and her knee bobbed lightly under the table. She wanted to set the tempo control, the pace. I countered with the Budapest Gambit. That got their attention. A woman in a steel-grey dress lowered her wine glass. A man in horn-rimmed glasses leaned forward. Somewhere near the back, I heard a cough, cut off mid-throat. The Budapest isn't flashy, but in the right hands, it turns the board into a trap door. Eleanor made her next move faster. Then another. She was trying to rattle me, maybe hoping I'd make a mistake, get nervous under the lights. She didn't know that I'd played this position 100 times, sometimes in my mind, while stacking chairs at the community center, sometimes scribbled into notebooks while waiting outside school for my dad to finish his second shift. I let her think she was winning. By move 6, I'd started the long arc toward sacrifice. "Do you even know what you're doing?" Elijah Eleanor asked, trying to keep her tone playful, but there was a quiver now, just beneath the surface. "Not really," I said softly, my eyes on the board. "I just move what feels right." There were murmurs now. Someone near the door had taken out their phone, probably streaming. The gala had started as a tech fundraiser, a glitzy, hypermodern affair with AI banners and drone footage panning the skyline outside. But the real show was happening right here on an old-fashioned chessboard between a boy in Goodwill shoes and a billionaire in 6-inch heels. The air had changed. No one was laughing now. A hedge fund exec I recognized from a Forbes article stepped closer to the board. "Elijah," he said slowly, "your fourth move. It's from the Kavalek annotation of Fischer's game against Spassky, isn't it?" I looked up only for a second. "My dad taught me." I lied. The man blinked. "Your dad plays." "No," I said. "He just knows how to clean the room so I can focus." That line landed harder than I expected, Eleanor's eyes twitched. Her next move was fast, almost reckless. She was rattled now. "Let's not get sentimental," she said. "This is a game, not a biography." I nodded, but games tell stories too, and I was about to write mine in 40 squares or less. A pawn moved, a bishop cut. The audience watched, not breathing. My heart didn't pound. My hands didn't shake. I'd played better games, sure, but never with this many witnesses. By move 10, I knew she had no idea where she was anymore. She'd followed her memorized sequence into a dead-end alley. Her queen stood exposed on the diagonal. Her knight pinned. One wrong move and I'd have the full center. I sacrificed my bishop. Gasps. One man cursed under his breath. "That's bold," someone whispered. No, it was exact. The trap was set. I looked up at her once. She was still smiling, but her eyes had clouded. The arrogance had shifted into calculation. Behind her, a server carrying truffle sliders had stopped mid-step. Even the music from the DJ station had dipped lower, as if sensing it wasn't the main event anymore. I was in control now, and she knew it. She was supposed to be teaching me humility. Instead, she was learning precision. And we'd only just begun. The first time I touched a chess piece, it wasn't on a board. It was on a laminated placemat my dad had brought home from a conference room trash bin. Some startup founder had left behind catering trays and a folded board with pieces scattered inside. The rook was missing. So was the white queen. I didn't care. I was 8, and it looked like a kingdom of logic in 64 squares. My dad had looked tired that night, always did around tax season, when overtime shifts stacked, and his arthritis flared in both knees. He walked with a slight limp. Not that anyone in the building ever noticed. He cleaned when no one was watching. That's how he preferred it. Quiet, methodical, invisible. I wasn't supposed to come with him, but childcare's expensive, and sometimes emergencies happened. When they did, I curled up on the leather couches outside the 47th floor boardroom with a flashlight, a sketchbook, and that chess placemat. While he mopped polished floors and scrubbed fingerprints off glass, I learned what it meant to control a center. He never told me to sleep. He never told me to stop. He just said, "Elijah, some games start before you even sit down." By age 10, I was printing chess puzzles at the public library 2 neighborhoods away. We didn't have internet at home, but Mrs. Keene at the front desk would let me use the timed computer for 15 minutes if no one else was waiting. I watched YouTube videos with no sound, just the moves. My favorites were the annotated breakdowns of Spassky's sacrifices, Carlsen's tempo traps, and Nakamura's bullet speed. By 12, I was annotating my own games in spiral notebooks and running drills with myself. Every week, I'd add a new defense to my repertoire. Sicilian Najdorf, King's Indian, Scandinavian. I didn't just study games, I studied players. Not their wins, but their habits. Fischer's silence, Kasparov's eyes before a capture, the way Judith Polgar tapped her fingers when calculating a fork. I learned more from their body language than their final moves. I didn't tell people I played. Not at school, not at church. It made them uncomfortable. Chess, they'd say. Ain't that for like Europe people? But I didn't care. It was a world where logic ruled not looks, not pedigree, not who your daddy was, just the board. And I had learned to live on the board. My dad never understood the game, but he understood why I played it. One night when I beat a computer AI 3 times my level, I ran into the break room with the receipt tape I'd scribbled the moves on. He was replacing vending machine bulbs. I waved it in front of him. "I made it work," I said. "The Caro-Kann variation. It folded after move 19. He looked at the paper, then at me, then smiled in that quiet way he does, like lighting a candle instead of flipping a switch. "Don't burn out too fast," he said. "Smart kids get bored. Bored kids get bitter. Bitter men stay stuck." I folded the paper and tucked it into my pocket. Still have it somewhere. By the time I turned 15, I'd entered a few online tournaments through the school lab using borrowed logins. I never revealed my name. My handle was ChalkPorn17. I played anonymously beat adults who had university credentials in their bios and logged every single match. No one knew. Not my classmates. Not my teachers. Until one day, I got called to the principal's office. They thought I'd hacked the school computer lab. Thought I was cheating. You don't just go from basic math to patterning elite-level chess simulations overnight, they said. You must have stolen someone's password or installed scripts. I didn't argue. They suspended me for a week. When I came back, my login no longer worked. I didn't tell my dad. He would have marched up there and embarrassed himself in front of people who didn't deserve the heat of his breath. Instead, I printed my games at the library again, played against myself again, imagined new combinations in my head while sweeping gym floors after basketball practice. I got good at losing. Not games, just the recognition. They never saw me coming. Never even looked. So when Eleanor Rourke said, "Let's play back in that glossy, over-air-conditioned gala hall," I didn't flinch. Of course she thought it was a joke. She'd seen me handing out bottles all night, not because I worked there, but because the catering manager was short a hand, and I'd offered. I needed the internship hours, and Ms. Jensen from the internship office said if I showed initiative, they'd write me a letter of recommendation for a community college program. So I showed up, tucked in my shirt, and said yes to anything that wasn't illegal. That's what started all this. A yes to carry drinks. A yes to a joke invitation. And a yes to playing the most important game of my life on a board that wasn't mine, in a room that wasn't built for me, surrounded by people who'd decided what I was before I moved a single pawn. But as I moved through the opening plays, all I could think about was that night in the 47th floor boardroom. The warm buzz of old fluorescent lights, the static hum of the city through sealed windows, my father's broom swaying like a pendulum in the hallway, and the silence that made room for thought. Back then I wasn't trying to beat anyone. I was just trying to make sense of the world, piece by piece, move by move. And now, seated across from Eleanor, I could feel it returning. Not the pressure of being watched, but the gravity of having clarity. Because in her eyes, I saw what I'd always seen in people like her. They thought silence was submission. They didn't understand it was strategy. The floor beneath my chair vibrated faintly, like the marble was holding its breath. I heard the clink of a glass stem tapping against the chess table's edge. Eleanor's manicured hand with a Rolex just peeking under her sleeve hovered over the board, pausing before placing her bishop. "She's following the Nimzo Indian," someone murmured behind her. It didn't matter. I knew this script. She was playing for spectacle, not control. The kind of game designed to impress onlookers, not test opponents. Memorized lines rehearsed confidence. I countered quickly with the Budapest gambit, pawn to e5. A pause spread through the room. Not long, but long enough. The kind of pause people make before they realize they might be underestimating you. I didn't look up. I just listened to the silence around the board shift. The energy sagged in a way that only happens when the punchline lands flat and the joke turns into something else. "You sure about that one?" Elijah Eleanor asked, tilting her head with theatrical concern. "Don't want to make your first move a mistake." My first move, I said evenly, was sitting down. A beat. Someone near the front let out a short, startled laugh, then tried to swallow it. Eleanor blinked, then smiled like a politician at a podium. She moved her knight forward, an attempt to stay in control. She was trying to stay ahead of the narrative. She didn't know it had already slipped out of her hands. My reply came instantly. Bishop out. Then another piece, another line. I didn't bother to think. I had thought all of this before 100 times in my mind, in between refilling water dispensers and tutoring kids at the center, on the train staring at the floor, in dreams sometimes. Eleanor leaned back, the edge of her lip twitching. The murmur behind her grew. A man in a pale blue linen blazer, later I'd learn his name was Barry Chu, a VC partner from Seattle, whispered, "That's the Rubenstein line. Who the hell taught this kid?" Another guest, a retired software executive, squinted through his glasses. No way he just stumbled into that. That's prepped. Deep prepped. Eleanor tried to wave it off. "You play a lot, Elijah?" she asked lightly. "I study more than I play," I answered. "Limited access to boards." She tilted her head. "Then how do you practice?" I didn't smile. Imagination. A ripple again. Not laughter. Unease. You can only laugh at someone if you're sure they don't belong. But if you're unsure, if their answers start to land with too much weight, then the humor dies, and suspicion takes its place. By move 5, I had established control over the center. By move 7, Eleanor hesitated. By move 9, she adjusted her seat. She looked around at the crowd like a stage actor, checking her audience mid-monologue, hoping someone would offer her a line she'd forgotten. No one did. Because something had shifted. I moved quickly. Bishop pins knight, a position from a 2008 game between Lecco and Aronian. I'd memorized the pattern while cleaning the community rec center, using crumpled printouts taped to the janitor closet door. Eleanor tapped her piece. 1, 2, 3 times. The room was no longer watching me. They were watching her. And she knew it. "This is fun," she said with a hollow laugh, but her eyes had tightened. She hadn't expected resistance, least of all from someone like me, brown-skinned, wearing a too-big shirt and a name badge from a catering company that wasn't mine. But I wasn't playing her. I was playing the position, control the tempo, hold tension, create doubt. She moved her rook defensively. That told me all I needed to know. "May I ask something?" I said, breaking the silence for the first time in 10 moves. Her eyes narrowed. "Of course." "Do you usually play to teach?" I asked, "or to win?" She stared at me. "I usually don't lose," she said. "That's not what I asked." The silence that followed was heavier than any applause. The tension spread. People edged closer. Servers paused at the periphery. Even the DJ had stopped mixing, his hands hovering above the controller like he didn't want to disrupt whatever was happening at the center of the room. I sacrificed a pawn, a deliberate trade designed to open the diagonal. There was a sharp intake of breath behind Eleanor. Someone muttered, "That's a trap. It's gotta be." But Eleanor didn't see it, or maybe she thought she could bluff past it. She took the bait. I moved my bishop. There it was. Her king was exposed. Not check. Not yet. But vulnerable. She didn't move immediately. And for the first time, Eleanor Rourke looked like she didn't know what came next. "You've studied a lot," she said, as if that explained it. "I studied everything I wasn't given," I replied. That hit. I saw it land. She glanced at the crowd, and her posture changed. Not slouched, but smaller. Her next move was slow, a knight reposition, defensive, hesitant. Too late. Her rhythm was gone. The game had turned. I glanced once to the edge of the room. One of the caterers, Mrs. Jensen, the woman who'd offered me the water delivery task, stood frozen, her eyes wide. She looked proud. And somewhere in the back, by the hallway, where the elevator opened to the freight dock, I thought I saw a familiar outline. Arms crossed. Baseball cap low. My dad, just watching. He never liked attention. But I knew when he showed up for me. I turned back to the board. Pawn to C5. The trap was closing, and everyone in the room could feel it. They'd expected a joke. Instead, they were witnessing a lesson. Not just in chess, in misjudgment. I moved my rook with precision, watching Eleanor's fingers twitch at her side. She didn't notice, yet, that she'd already lost her advantage 3 turns ago. Most players don't. They think a threat is loud, flashy. But the best ones, the ones that matter, they arrive quietly, in the space between moves. Eleanor shifted in her seat. Her lips glossed in that deep plum shade, pressed into a thin line. Her next move was slow, overthought, deliberate in the wrong way. She was stalling. Pawn to D3. It was a patch, not a defense. And that's when I knew she was improvising. Her memorized lines had dried up. The elite prep from her Ivy League tournaments, her years as a hedge fund strategist turned billionaire CEO. None of it could save her now. She wasn't playing chess anymore. She was surviving it. Across the room, a man in a burgundy suit leaned toward a guest beside him and whispered just loudly enough to carry, "He's building the Lasker sacrifice." "See it, that's not amateur work," another voice chimed in sharper. "No, it's deeper. That's from the 1962 Fischer-Benko match. He's 3 moves from forcing a duel threat. I heard it all but didn't react. That was part of the play. Make the silence heavier than the words. Then I made the move. My bishop, the one guarding my king side, swept across the board and took her knight. Gasps erupted like popcorn in a hot pan. Even the bartender froze mid-pour. A few phones rose higher. I could feel the shift in the air from polite curiosity to collective awe. Eleanor blinked. "That's a mistake," she said, shaking her head slightly. "You've exposed your right flank. I'm aware," I replied softly. She stared at the board, stared harder, then saw it. It wasn't just a trade, it was a trap. If she recaptured with her pawn, she'd open a diagonal to her queen. If she didn't, she'd cede space and tempo. Give me full control of the center. A classic sacrifice, but not a beginner's trick. This one had layers, and it rattled her. She picked up her glass and took a sip, stalling. Her hand trembled just slightly, like a string inside her had gone slack. The rim of the glass tapped once against her lower teeth. Her eyes darted to the side, scanning the crowd for a lifeline. None came. Not even from the chess enthusiasts scattered around the room. Some were now nodding slowly, hands to chins, watching the board, as if they were witnessing the unthinkable. And they were. A woman in a pearl choker, standing behind Eleanor, whispered, "He's orchestrating this." Not reacting. Orchestrating. A young man, no older than me, leaned in toward a camera phone. "This is the Budapest Gambit line into a Fischer-Lasker overlay." On instinct. Jesus, Eleanor made the recapture. Her pawn took my bishop just as I'd hoped, and with it, she gave me the match. She just didn't know it yet. I let the moment breathe. 1 second. 2. I reached into my pocket, not for a phone or a note, but for something else. A cloth pouch. It was old, frayed at the edges, stitched with uneven thread by hands that shook from arthritis and soap burns. My grandmother's pouch, the one she'd sewn for me when I was 10, the year we lost the apartment to mold. She called it your keeper of small glories. I kept my favorite chess piece inside, the pawn carved from oak darker than the others. I set the pouch down on the corner of the table gently, as if to say, I brought more to this game than you ever imagined. Eleanor's eyes flicked to it. She didn't ask. She knew it wasn't decoration. I moved again. Bishop to g5. Her queen was exposed. The murmurs rose again, this time tinged with awe and disbelief. She's cornered, someone said. He's boxing her in with tempo, another voice murmured. I allowed myself a glance at the crowd. Some had stopped recording, not because they weren't interested, but because they felt something sacred was happening. The way people lower their phones during a song that hits too close. When you realize you're not watching content, you're witnessing something real. Eleanor touched her queen, then pulled her hand back. Her nails tapped once, twice on the table's lacquered edge. "What's your goal here?" she asked, her voice just barely above a whisper. To embarrass me, I tilted my head slightly. "No, ma'am," I said. To be seen. The weight of that settled across her like dust. And I think in that moment, she understood that this wasn't a game between us. It never had been. It was between her assumptions and my reality. I played my rook next. It landed with a light click, but the sound echoed like a bell. Her only options were bad now. Save her queen and lose tempo, or protect her king and lose the game outright. She stared at the board as if willing the pieces to reconfigure. They didn't. Check. And with it, checkmate was inevitable. The room didn't erupt. It didn't cheer. It held still like everyone needed to sit in the silence Eleanor had filled for so long. All eyes were on her, but none with pity. Only the raw, disarming recognition that they had witnessed someone underestimated, someone invisible, dismantle power with elegance. "Impossible," she muttered. I looked up. I learned from Kasparov's 1984 match against Karpov, I said. "Move 12. He made the same mistake you just did." She stood, rattled, trying to recover dignity, but the board said everything she didn't. And behind me, I heard a tray set down gently. "Luis, my dad." He didn't say a word, but he nodded once. That was all I needed. When I stood, I didn't gloat. I didn't bow or wave or perform. I just reset the board. One piece at a time. Quiet. Focused. The way my dad taught me to do everything. From folding laundry to shaking hands. Eleanor hadn't moved. She stood beside the board, staring not at the pieces, but past them, like trying to re-enter a version of the evening where she was still in control. Her guests murmured behind her, some peeling off in polite retreat, others simply shifting their weight, uncomfortably unsure where to look. No one was laughing anymore. The camera phones weren't aimed at her. They were aimed at me. A woman in her 60s, silver braids coiled neatly at the nape of her neck, stepped forward from the side of the room. She held a glass of water in one hand and a phone in the other. She hadn't spoken all night, hadn't smiled once, but now her face softened. "Elijah Moreno," she said, with the certainty of someone confirming what she already knew. I turned. "Yes, ma'am. I thought so," she said. "You're the one from the West Loop library system. You used to print annotated Fisher matches on the public printers, in color." I blinked. "Once a week," she added. "I was the head of the district judiciary back then. You filed a grant proposal. Chess club in underserved schools' mobile board units. It got shut down. Something about funding restrictions." "I remember," I said slowly. "You wrote it by hand," she said. 10 pages. Not a single typo. The room shifted again. This wasn't just a moment anymore. It was history resurfacing. The woman stepped closer and handed me her business card. Avery Langston, it read. Retired judge. Youth Equity Initiatives Council. "You still want to run that mobile chess program?" she asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. I nodded. "Let's talk," she said. "This city's overdue for someone like you." Behind me, I heard the unmistakable clearing of a throat. Eleanor. She stepped forward, her smile strained and paper-thin. Of course," she said quickly. "This is exactly what I hoped would come from tonight's demonstration. You know, spotlighting raw local talent." She gestured with one hand, as though presenting me as if this had all been her idea. A performance, an act of benevolence. A man in a dark turtleneck, Barry Chu, I later learned, cocked his head. "You invited him up here to make a point, not offer opportunity," he said flatly. "You thought it would be charming to let the help fumble at the board while we sipped wine." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "I would never." "You did," he cut in. "You called it ironic, remember? Let's have the custodian's boy show us how strategy works in the janitor's closet." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was surgical. One by one, the guests began to step away. Not with confrontation, but with distance. The kind that wounds deeper than words. Cold farewells, averted eyes. It wasn't just her power being questioned. It was her relevance. As she stood there, hands curled slightly at her sides, I turned and walked toward the back of the room. My dad was there, leaning lightly against the wall, where the industrial carpet met polished marble. He held a folded towel in one hand, and the faint scent of lemon floor polish clung to his sleeves. I stopped in front of him. "Did you see?" I asked. He nodded once. I saw everything. I looked down. "You mad I did it in front of all those people?" He shook his head. "They needed to see. You didn't humiliate her. She did that herself. She tried to spin it like it was planned," I said quietly. "That's what scared people do," he replied. "They turn mirrors into curtains." We stood there for a second, just breathing the same air. Then I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a folded page, creased and worn, the ink slightly faded, the original mock-up of my old grant proposal. I handed it to him. He unfolded it slowly. "You kept it?" he asked. I wanted to remember what it felt like to build something no one saw. He looked up, eyes damp but proud. "Now they see it." A voice called from behind me. "Ms. Jensen, the catering manager." "Elijah," she said, hurrying over. "That was... I don't know chess, but that was beautiful." She reached into her blazer and pulled out an envelope. "I didn't get the chance earlier, but you left this in the staff break room last week. Your community college rec letter," I added a note. I opened it. Her handwriting added in the margins, "Elijah is not just promising. He is already delivering." She grinned. "I sent it to a friend at the city university too, just in case." Before I could reply, a low chime rang from the speaker system, the formal end of the gala. The guests were dispersing. Eleanor stood alone near the board, the room now echoing with her absence more than her presence. She glanced at me once, but said nothing. I didn't need her words. She wasn't the audience anymore, and I wasn't the entertainment. That was done. Now came the real game, and I already had control of the board. The elevator ride down was silent, not awkward, calm, like the moment after a storm when you realize the house is still standing. My dad stood beside me, shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. In his left hand, he still held the folded towel. It was muscle memory, like he didn't quite believe the moment was over. "You hungry?" he asked, as the doors opened. "Starving." We walked down the corridor past the empty catering carts and wheeled lights. No one stopped us. No one asked where we were going. For the first time in that building, we didn't feel invisible. The service hallway led us to the staff kitchen, where someone had left out trays of untouched hors d'oeuvres. My dad grabbed a cloth napkin and piled on a few chicken skewers a small stack of Gouda crackers and one of those ridiculous macarons that looked like they cost more than my bus pass. He handed it to me without a word, then made a plate for himself. We sat on overturned crates in the supply room, chewing slowly. There was something ancient about eating in silence with your father. Sacred, even. You could be a prince or a janitor. It didn't change the rhythm of that kind of meal. You played like your life was on that board, he said eventually. I swallowed. It kinda was. He nodded. It showed. And that's when I heard the tap of heels on concrete. Eleanor Rourke stepped into the room like a ghost. Less polished now, her blazer unbuttoned a slight sheen of sweat along her brow. But her chin was still up, still fixed in that posture of command. She carried a wine glass, half full, though she didn't drink from it. "I wanted to speak with you privately," she said, eyes on me. My dad didn't move. He kept eating. I nodded. "Go ahead." She didn't sit. Instead, she stepped closer to the wire rack filled with plastic wrap and paper goods. Her fingers grazed the edge of a sealed box. "You humiliated me tonight," she said softly. I said nothing. But worse, she continued, "You shifted the story. And stories, Elijah. Stories are what build empires." I tilted my head. "Did you come here to take that back?" She laughed, not loud, dry, tired. "No, I came here to understand how I got it so wrong." I raised an eyebrow. "You're asking me to teach you something?" Her eyes narrowed, but she caught herself. "I suppose I am." I glanced at my dad, who simply leaned back on the crate, now folding his napkin like a hotel concierge. "You saw someone carrying bottled water and decided they had nothing to offer but obedience," I said calmly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice, over and over." She looked at me long and hard. "Do you want me to apologize?" she asked, voice low. "No," I said. "I want you to reflect. Alone. In a quiet room. Preferably with a mirror." She blinked. "I wasn't playing to beat you," I continued. "I was playing to be heard." Eleanor looked down at her glass, swirling it once. "I've spent years building networks, raising capital, shaping conversations." She exhaled. And tonight none of that mattered. My dad stood up slowly. "People don't remember who funded the room," he said. "They remember who changed it." Eleanor looked at him like seeing him for the first time. "I never asked your name," she said. "Didn't need to," he replied. "I cleaned your office." Her face twitched. Not guilt. Recognition. She turned back to me. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "But if you ever want a platform, funding mentorship, my door's open." I stood. "I don't want your door," I said. "I'm building my own room. We let that hang in the air. No anger, no triumph, just clarity." She gave a short nod, turned and walked away, her heels echoing faintly until the door clicked shut behind her. Later that night we got home just after midnight. Our apartment was still warm from the sun, the fans humming in the windows. I tossed my jacket onto the couch and reached into my pocket. The cloth pouch, I pulled it out and set it on the table. Then I opened my backpack and took out the chessboard. My father's old one, chipped on the corners, burn marks on the bottom, from when the kitchen caught fire 2 years ago. I set it up, piece by piece. And for the first time in my life, I played a solo game, not to study, or to prepare, or to escape, but to honor the silence that had shaped me. My queen moved last, across the board, to the center, where she belonged. By sunrise, my name was on 5 local news sites. Teen chess prodigy checkmates, billionaire in charity stunt gone wrong. Custodian's son silences tech giant in live match. Elijah Moreno, the quiet checkmate heard across Chicago. The video, shaky vertical filmed on someone's phone, was already on TikTok, stitched into commentary by influencers I'd never met, with captions like, "This is what quiet power looks like," and "You never know who you're underestimating." I didn't check the view count, but Ms. Jensen texted me a screenshot. Over 1.2 million in 10 hours. By noon, my inbox had exploded. Emails from strangers offering laptops, crowdfunding links tagged with my name, invitations to podcasts, chess blogs, even a morning show segment. A local councilwoman DM'd me on Instagram. "Your story matters. We'd love you to speak at our Youth Leadership Summit." I didn't respond to most of them, but I replied to one. Judge Avery Langston. Her message was short. "We reviewed your old grant application. My foundation board unanimously approved $35,000 for your mobile chess initiative. Let's talk timelines and locations." I stared at the message for a long time, then opened the drawer where I'd kept the original proposal, yellowed edges folded 3 times. I set it beside the email on my laptop screen. Same dream, different world. Across the room, my dad was fixing the radiator, squatting in his worn-out jeans, his toolbox open beside him. "Hey," I said, holding up the email. "We got funding." He looked over his shoulder. For the program, I nodded. He grinned and returned to tightening the valve. "Told you," he muttered. "One day it'd pay off." But it wasn't just money. The City University reached out. A full ride. Community engagement scholarship. "Come build with us," their subject line read. I forwarded it to my school counselor. She called me crying. "You were going to leave," she said. "And now everyone wants you to stay." That afternoon I went back to the building. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. The security guard, Daryl, gave me a quiet fist bump at the entrance. "I saw you online," he said. "Didn't know you had that in you." I smiled. Most people didn't. I headed up to the 47th floor. The chessboard was gone. The gala banners were being pulled down by a cleaning crew I didn't recognize. One of the women, a short lady with dyed red curls, turned and gasped when she saw me. "You're him," she said. "From the match," I nodded. "You made us proud," she said softly. On the table near the elevators, I noticed something strange. A folded sheet of paper. No envelope. Just resting there like someone had left it deliberately. It was handwritten. "Elijah, I won't rewrite what happened. I won't justify it. But I've made decisions from fear before. I recognize the shape of what I did. You held up a mirror. I didn't like what I saw. But that's not your fault. It's mine. I hope your board grows wider than mine ever did. ER." I folded the note and put it in my back pocket. Not to keep it, just to remember it existed. Downstairs, I passed the catering lounge and saw Ms. Jensen packing boxes. She looked up and gave a soft wave. "Just got a call from Channel 7, she said. "They want your side of the story." "I don't think I need to tell it again," I replied. She tilted her head. "Then why are you here?" I walked to the back of the lounge and opened the storage closet. My father's mop cart was still there. The old one, faded blue with a cracked corner. On the side, someone had taped a note in marker, "Luis Moreno, nights only." I pulled it off and tucked it into my bag. "Because this is where the story started," I said. Ms. Jensen nodded. "And where's it going next?" I smiled. "I'm going to teach 100 kids how to play like they belong in any room they walk into." That night, Judge Langston invited me to her foundation's dinner. Not a gala, just a small gathering in a community center downtown. Folding chairs, paper plates, everyone dressed in what they had, not what they wanted to be seen wearing. She deuced me by saying he didn't need money. He needed access. Then she handed me a check with my name on it. It wasn't the amount that stunned me. It was the signature line. Not hers, but mine. "You're the signatory," she said. "It's your project now." I pressed the check between my fingers and whispered the words my dad always told me. Some games start before you even sit down. And now, finally, I had a seat. 2 weeks after the match, a reporter from the Tribune asked if I'd ever been trained by a grandmaster. "No," I said. "Just silence. And library hours." He blinked, unsure if I was joking. But I wasn't. That quote ended up in the headline. "Checkmate in silence. How a janitor's son beat the Queen of Tech." They ran the story with a photo of me and my father outside our apartment, standing beside our cracked plastic mailbox. I hadn't known the photographer was snapping until afterward. We were just laughing. Him holding a thermos of coffee, me holding a flyer for the first Quiet Games launch session. It was never about the win. It was about the shift. The City Council issued a press release endorsing the new mobile chess initiative within underserved neighborhoods. Judge Langston had pulled strings, so had a couple local non-profits. I didn't ask who, I just kept my head down and my pieces in place. We opened with one borrowed van, vinyl sticker on the side, Quiet Games, strategy for every street. Inside were 20 boards, plastic timers, and laminated rule sheets in English and Spanish. The first session was in Inglewood. 12 kids showed up. Some came for the snacks. Some came because their older cousins told them it was that chess kid from YouTube. Most came out of curiosity. "Do we have to know how to play?" one of them asked. "No," I said. "Just how to think." That line hit something. By the third session, we had 35 kids. By the fifth, 2 vans. I started writing my own curriculum. Not just openings and end games, but mindset exercises. What does pressure feel like? How do you recognize patterns that don't look like patterns? What do you do when someone underestimates you? One girl, Keisha, age 9, asked me if you can win without a queen. I smiled and told her about a match I played in 8th grade. Pawn promotion in move 45. No queen needed. She beamed. That weekend her mother baked cupcakes with icing chess pieces on top. Meanwhile, back in the corporate world, Eleanor Rourke was spiraling. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. She issued a vague apology on LinkedIn, then a video, then a full blog post titled "What I Learned from Losing." The comments were split. Some praised her self-reflection. Others saw it as damage control. But the internet never forgets context, especially not when your leaked email surfaces a week later. I hadn't planned to read it, but someone forwarded it anyway. Her words were hard to unsee. "It'll be good PR to play with the janitor's kid. If he fumbles, it's harmless. If he surprises, I'll look like a visionary." That one line broke her. Tech funders distanced themselves. The Diversity Council she sat on issued a statement saying her values didn't align with their mission. Her co-founders quietly took over daily operations. Her name disappeared from the press kits. And when her next gala was scheduled, at the same skyscraper where she used to host them, half the RSVPs were declined. The catering company replaced her usual vendor. The guest list shrank. Even the DJ from that night didn't return her emails. I didn't ask for any of it. But it happened, and she wasn't the only one who noticed. Barry Chu, the VC who'd defended me that night, called Judge Langston to offer a corporate match donation to Quiet Games. $50,000. Just like that. He didn't ask for recognition. Just a spreadsheet of how we'd use it. We sent one the next day. 3 more vans, part-time mentors, a traveling coach. Each van had one laminated quote inside play, "Like you belong." Kids started tagging the phrase on their Instagram reels. The videos went viral again. But this time, it wasn't me they were watching. It was them, beating each other, learning, earning each move. The press came back, not for the scandal, but for the aftershock. CNN ran a story from Janitor's son to youth strategist Elijah Moreno's checkmate movement. The anchor asked, "Did you ever want to get revenge?" I answered, "No." I wanted to change the board. Back home, I walked past the same corner store every night. Mr. Ray, the owner, always waved. "Keep building, kid," he'd say. "We need more boards." One night, I asked him what he meant. "Boards are balance," he said. "In life, in games, in justice." You gave us one. That stuck. So I made a new flyer for quiet games. A different design. No photos of me. Just a silhouette of a pawn growing into a tree. Below it, the tagline, "We don't teach chess. We teach structure." The email surfaced on a Sunday. I was at the community center, resetting boards when my phone lit up. Twice, 3 times, 5 notifications in a row. Texts from friends, volunteers, even one from Judge Langston. "We need to talk." "It's Eleanor." The post was from a whistleblower blog. Not flashy. No ads. Just raw screenshots, dates and timestamps. In the email, dated 3 years prior, Eleanor had written, "Decline the proposal. No one's going to fund some janitor's kid trying to play coach. What he needs is a library card, not a non-profit." It was from my original grant submission, the one I'd handwritten at the library and mailed through the foundation's public portal. I remembered attaching a paperclip because I couldn't afford a proper binder. And she had read it. She hadn't just rejected it. She'd mocked it. That truth hit deeper than any public insult. Because it meant she'd seen me before. And instead of opening a door, she'd shut it so tightly I spent 3 years thinking it was never even there. I stared at the screen for a long time. No rage, just a slow, deliberate kind of cold. A reporter called me within the hour. "Elijah, do you have a comment on the email leak?" I said, "I don't need one." "Do you plan to respond?" "I already did," I said. I built the thing she said was impossible. By Monday morning, Eleanor Rourke's remaining advisory roles were dissolved. A diversity coalition removed her name from their grant initiative. 3 angel investors publicly disclosed pulling out of her next venture. She posted nothing, not even a denial. Because what could she say that she never meant it? The words were hers, signed, sent, sealed with her own keystrokes. But while the media ran headlines, emails reveal pattern of class bias, the silent sabotage of inner-city talent, I went back to work. Because there were still kids to teach. At our Southside Satellite Center, we had 40 kids show up that Tuesday. We didn't have enough boards. A girl named Joy built one from construction paper, while her brother taught her the names of the pieces. One boy, Jamir, stood at the back, arms crossed, until I offered him the first move. He said, "What if I mess it up?" I said. Then we learn why. He played, he lost, then asked to play again. That's how it always starts. Across town, Eleanor released a 1-line statement through her publicist. "I will be stepping away from public leadership roles indefinitely." She called it a pause, but we knew what it was. The end of her game. One afternoon, I visited the building where it all began, the skyscraper. I walked through the main lobby wearing my Quiet Games hoodie. No name tag, no catering tray, no permission slip. The receptionist recognized me. She buzzed me in without a word. I took the service elevator to the 47th floor. The chessboard was gone now. The room felt colder without it, like someone had removed its heart and replaced it with silence. But on the table there was a note. Not addressed, just left there. It read, "You were right. I didn't see you." And now I see what I missed. I built a company. You built a movement. It wasn't signed, but I knew who it was from. I folded it once and left it where it belonged, beside the table. A few days later, an executive from a tech accelerator offered to scale Quiet Games. Your story has viral reach, he said. We can expand nationwide, partner with sponsors, brand the initiative. I asked him one question. How many games have you played with the kids? He blinked. I meant long-term strategy. I shook his hand and walked away. Because this wasn't about branding. It was about access. That Saturday, we held our first Quiet Games citywide tournament. 106 players, ages 7 to 17. No entry fees, no fancy gear. Just folding chairs, vinyl boards, and a room filled with possibilities. When it was over, I handed a small pawn trophy to the last girl standing, a shy 12-year-old who had played the King's Indian with flawless patience. She whispered, I didn't think I could beat anyone. I knelt beside her. Do you think that now? She shook her head, smiling. No, she said. Now I think I can't wait to lose again. So I can learn more. I stood and looked around the room. No marble floors, no photographers, just a space where no one was underestimated. That was the real checkmate, the kind you don't win on the board, the kind you build piece by piece until the old rules collapse. And no one calls you kid anymore. They call you coach. By spring, Quiet Games had reached its 6th neighborhood. Each van now had its own name, suggested by the kids. The Bishop Bus, Night School, Porn Stars. Silly. Perfect. Every Saturday we parked near schools that didn't have chess clubs, sometimes didn't even have working water fountains. We unfolded tables under basketball hoops, between stoops on corners where chess had never been more than a metaphor. The kids came. They always came. Not for competition, but for control. For the right to make a move and know someone was watching. We added life logic modules between rounds, sessions on decision-making, stress and second chances. A retired Marine taught kids how to breathe through a losing streak. A former parole officer taught them how to pause before reacting. We didn't say life skills. We just played the game, then named the lesson later. Some kids showed up in sneakers with holes, some with gold chains, some with chipped nails and notebooks full of drawings. Didn't matter. When they sat across from a board, they became something else. They became players. I kept my face out of most of the press. I wasn't the story anymore. They were. Still, sometimes the media came sniffing around, especially after the New York Times did a piece titled, "The Boy Who Outplayed a Billionaire Now Builds Kids Who Win Without Winning." The story went global. We got donation requests from Brazil, inquiries from Cape Town. An elementary school teacher in Idaho emailed to ask for our printed curriculum. We translated it into 5 languages. The board was growing. But I didn't feel like a founder. I felt like a custodian, a keeper of a fragile, unfinished room. One afternoon, I brought my dad to the new downtown Quiet Games Center. It wasn't big, just 2 rooms and a coat closet converted into a library. But it had real heat-working lights and an entire shelf of donated books. He looked around for a long time, hands deep in his jacket pockets. This used to be an accounting office, he said. You remember, yeah. They never turned the lights off, left coffee cups everywhere. He walked to the back wall, where we'd hung an old photo. Me, age 9, asleep in the mop closet while he mopped the floor outside. It was grainy, but clear enough to see the board on my lap. Underneath the photo was a plaque. We don't ask for seats. We build the table. He didn't say anything. He just reached into his coat and pulled out his old ID badge. Found this last week in a drawer, he said. I turned it over. Luis Moreno, Night Custodian. The card was cracked, the corner was torn, the magnetic strip faded from a decade of swipes. "You sure?" I asked, holding it carefully. He nodded. "Frame it," he said, "right next to the board. Let them know who kept the lights on." So I did. That afternoon, I wrote a small paragraph to hang beneath it. This room was cleaned before it was claimed. It was protected before it was praised. The man who kept the doors open never asked to be seen. But without him, no one else would have entered. The next week, one of our students, Sasha, age 11, asked if she could stay after and help clean. "I want to do what your dad did," she said, "so other kids can play too." I handed her a cloth. "Then you already understand the game." That night, while locking up, I passed a window where someone had left a small stack of flyers. I stopped when I saw the name. Eleanor Rourke. Not a press release, not an ad, an application. She'd requested to volunteer at the next Quiet Games weekend tournament. Just one box checked, willing to assist with setup and cleanup. No title, no speech request, no attached donation. I showed it to Judge Langston the next day. She read it twice, then said, "Your call." I thought about it for a long time, then checked approve, because some people build power by making moves, and others earn it by resetting the board. The exhibit was quiet. No velvet ropes, no security guards, just glass panels and soft light on old things that mattered more now than they ever had when they were new. The Museum of Urban Culture had dedicated one wall to Quiet Games. They called it Boards We Built. On it hung 3 items. The original flyer from our first Saturday session, smudged ink corner bent. My grandmother's cloth chest pouch burned at the edges, still stitched with mismatched thread. And my dad's old ID badge, Luis Moreno, Night Custodian. A group of middle schoolers shuffled in loud at first, until they reached the board. Then came the hush. That same hush from the gala, from the final move, from the first match played under streetlight, not spotlight. I stood near the back, hands in my jacket pockets, letting them take it in, watching as one boy pointed at the board and whispered something to his friend. They didn't know I was there. That was the best part. Eleanor came quietly, not through the front door, but from the side hallway, dressed in black scarf, loose around her neck. She didn't speak. She didn't pose. She just left something beside the base of the exhibit, a small white pawn. Nothing else. No note. No signature. Then she turned and walked out. It wasn't penance. It was participation. Later that week, I hosted a final chess session before heading to university. Just one last round with the kids in the original West Loop rec room. No camera crews, no press. Just Joy, Jameer, Sasha, Keisha, all gathered around a board as I played blindfolded calling moves from memory. They beat me, fair and square. We laughed. Before they left, I handed each of them a piece, not to keep, but to pass along. "You give this to the next person who says they don't know how to start," I told them. "This is your permission slip." That night, I walked home with my father. We didn't talk much until we passed the alley where he used to park the mop cart. He stopped and looked down at the spot. "This where you used to wait for me?" "Yeah." "What did you think about back then?" I paused. "Every piece has value," I said. "You just have to wait for the right moment." He nodded. At the door, he handed me a wrapped frame. "Open it when you're alone." I did. It was a photo of our hands, his old, mine young, both moving toward the same chessboard. Underneath it was a single sentence, printed in small black letters. "You were always the last move I needed to win." Have you ever been underestimated? Where are you listening to this story from? Please like, share, and subscribe. We've still got boards to build.